Yo, what's good, Spirit Squad? It's your boy Dre, and today we're gonna do a Spirit Snapshot on how to beat Eladamri's Toolbox. And honestly, I don't know why this deck is as slept on as it is. Like, people were really hype on this like a month ago, right? But it just kind of dropped off the map, and the deck's good. That's all it is. The deck's good. Like, it just won a Modern Challenge a couple of weeks ago. Check this deck list out. And it's definitely a deck that we should be aware of because it's almost in the same spot that we're in, where not that many people are playing it anymore, but the people who are playing it are really good with the deck because it just does a bunch of cool stuff. And I think this deck is definitely a better matchup for us than Amulet Titan, but it's still dangerous enough to be looked out for, right? So they still have their Dryad of the Ilysian Grove, they still have a bunch of Primeval Titans, but they also have things like Skyclave Apparition and Path to Exile. So even though it is a favorable matchup for us because we can just race them, it's definitely not a buy or a hyper positive matchup or anything like that. I think we're just slightly favored. And this deck luckily gives us enough time to actually use our Spell Quellers and our Skyclave Apparition, and that way they're a lot less likely than some other decks like Amulet Titan are to get their Dryad Valakut tricks off. So we do have some real defenses there, which is pretty nice because otherwise we're kind of cold to things like Prime Time and Dryad plus Valakut, so good for us. On their end, though, they do, of course, have Dryad of the Elysian Grove. They've got Primeval Titan. Both of those are must-answer threats. They also have Eladamri's Call, so that their deck is ridiculously consistent. And it is good that we can counter that with either a Spell Queller or a Mausoleum Wanderer, but it's still something that we need to just be aware of, especially since it's playable at instant speed. So they could be pretending they hold up mana for their Elvish Reclaimer, but joke's on us, it's an Eladamri's Call.
Gotcha, bitch.
So another thing that we just kind of need to be on the lookout for. Also of note, just about all of these decks, since they're already playing Valakut and it makes red mana, almost all of these decks play Boil out of the sideboard. So as a blue deck, we do need to be aware of that. We do have ways to play around it though. Like we can play Seachrome Coast, Cavern of Souls, any of the Horizon Canopy style lands, and we can even use Flooded Strands to search for basic planes to make sure that Boil doesn't just get us. So please be aware of that when you play this deck. But now that we do at least know a lot of the key cards that these guys are on, what we're going to do here is just go ahead and kind of jam a sample game, and we'll see that we do get to be on the play, so that is a pretty big plus against this deck, since realistically most games come down to whether or not we can race the Primeval Titan, and, well, let's see what happens. So here we do have a pretty decent hand. It's not great, it's not special, but it does have 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop that we actually want to play. And in most matchups, that's really all you can ask. So let's go ahead here, and we do have the 2 basic planes in here. So we're just going to go ahead and grab a land out of our deck, and, oh, that's actually a mistake. So in retrospect, we actually should have grabbed the Hallowed Fountain because we know this deck plays Path to Exile. So we should be keeping all of our basics in our deck when, when we have the ability to do that. That way, if they play more than one Path to Exile, especially since we already have 2 basics in hand, we're like more guaranteed to be able to fetch a basic out of our deck. Where now, if we do this and our next draw step is a basic and our deck only has 4 basics in it, and they Path to Exile, we get no benefit from the path. So that was a definite mistake. Either way, let's go ahead and untap here. We've got our Spectral Sailor. Life is okay because there's no turn 1 Reclaimer. That's nice. Okay, so Moorland Haunt's not a bad draw. So we go ahead, we swing for 1, we see what happens on their next turn. And it's going to be a tapped Temple Garden. Okay. So here they are playing their... Okay. So now we get to just go ahead and 5 them here. And I think it's not really worth trying to like hold up Shacklegeist and tap this thing, but see what I mean? Now we're like out of basics. So if they do have another Path to Exile, we're not going to get to search a basic. Granted, we do have Rattle Chains to play around it, but it's still something that we need to be aware of. And here, this is actually, oh, actually that's kind of perfect. So they play at least 2 Castle Garenbrigs in, well, all of these lists. So I don't really think it was worth it to hold up Spectral Sailor and use Spectral plus Skyclave to tap this in their upkeep. because like they're pretty likely to just have this and be able to play Primeval Titan anyway. So I don't think it was really right there to tap the Florahedron and like try to cut them off of mana. Like this deck plays so much mana that it's not really worth it to try that route. Um, so they are at 9, and they're gonna start getting their Field of the Dead. You see, they fetch out the Valakut too. So we just kind of need to make sure that we are applying pressure because that is what this game has come down to now. So we've gone ahead, done that. We're gonna tap down the mana source they have. I mean, we're already not trying to attack through this, so that's whatever. But you see, we do get this on the table. We get to attack them all the way down to 1. So now they have to beat us through a Shacklegeist that's going to tap down this Primeval Titan, and they can't. So this was definitely a little bit of a, I'm not going to say like an oddly slow game, but it's a game in which we both kind of got to do stuff, right? Us getting to be on the play was pretty big, which was nice, but you see they got to do their Field of the Dead, they resolved the Primeval Titan. We didn't really have anything special. Like, yes, we had a Skyclave to like get rid of their Dryad, but we both play 4 copies of each of the cards. So them having a Dryad and us having a Skyclave, both of those things were relatively likely to happen. They got to path one of our cards, we went ahead and got our lands out. We just drew an appropriate amount of threats and got to fly over them. And that's really what a lot of these games come down to, is just, can you race them and can you interact with the Dryad? If so, great, your life is generally pretty easy. If not, this resolved Primeval Titan will just get rid of us. And, well, you see the Field of the Dead's already developed, the Valakut's already developed. So this prime time definitely had a great chance to just kill us dead. But luckily that did not come to pass because we, got to get rid of the Dryad, we got to control the Titan, and we got to apply a clock. And in this matchup, really, that's just kind of what it boils down to, is do we get to develop this clock or not? And, well, that's just a relatively basic way to help get rid of the matchup. So now that we know more of how we want to approach it, we do know that we also get some sweet sideboard cards against this, right? So a card that I've played in the past, if you're especially scared of any Primeval Titan builds, really, is Aven Mindcensor. And the blue-white version of Spirits can definitely play Aven Mindcensor, but it really, really shines in Bance because Noble Hierarch can power it out on turn 2. A turn 2 Aven Mindcensor will just turn off the Reclaimer deck so much of the time. Like, it'll get rid of Elvish Reclaimer's ability, it'll get rid of Eladamri's Call, it'll get rid of any fetch lands because they play a bunch of them. It just does so much work, even when Primeval Titan actually resolves. So it's definitely a card that you can play if you are really scared of this matchup. And there's also more standard stuff that we play and have played in the past, like Unified Will, / Aether Gust. And Aether Gust especially is pretty good because these decks do play Cavern of Souls, naming Giant for Primeval Titan. So if you don't want to deal with that at all, you can just Aether Gust and remove it either from the stack or the battlefield, whichever scenario is the case whenever you draw your Aether Gust. And these are going to just be good cards to help fight this matchup. So this is something that we are definitely able to beat. Just make sure you're able to race them, keep their Dryad off the table if possible, make their Primeval Titan irrelevant by presenting a clock, and I believe you'll start being able to win these matchups too. So if you do like what you see, as always, just make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I will see y'all on the next one.